Okay, good evening. Bit of a one-off this one. No orchids in this one. I needed to do a sort of a wrap up on a couple of things that I can only really do stuck in the back garden rather than out in the field. First of all, I want to answer a couple of questions that have been thrown my way of late, basically talking about references and what's the sort of go-to reference guides that I use personally. Well, in terms of books, that Anne and Simon Harrop, now often referred to as Harrops amongst orchid people. It's quite a thick book, just full of pictures, full of information. It's my go-to book. I've had it for a few years. It's out of print. You can find them second hand if you search around. You're probably going to have to pay about 30 quid for it, but do it if you're into your orchids, because it's a great book. It's by far and away the best. You won't go short in terms of information. And as I say, it's full of pictures. So, if I see something out in the field, I'm not 100% sure. That's the first port of call. Just check in Harrops and see what they say, and give it a tick or a cross or whatever. The other go-to reference that I use is that Facebook and the Orchid group that I'm a member of. I'll put a link to it in the comments down below. If you're not already on board, it's worth signing up to. The site is full of enthusiastic amateurs like me, but also it has some very, very knowledgeable guys on there and girls on there, and just put a picture up, take a photograph, put a picture up, ask them what it is, and they'll tell you. They may lose you a little bit with botanical terms and references, but just look them up or ask for clarification. But the ultimate expertise really in there, and as I say, you can put up real-time photographs and videos, and they'll sort it out for you. So I strongly recommend, if you're not a member of that Facebook group already, then worth signing up to. Now, the real reason for doing this extra little video is to go back over the Castor Hanglands visit recently, because that site visit threw up 3 orchids that not only bamboozled me, but seemed to have bamboozled quite a lot of the experts. And there's been some discussion, and there's been some conclusions, and it's not 100%, but they're probably better than the conclusions that I came up with whilst doing the video. So I just want to run over those 3 and explain them a little bit to you. If you're into your, it's just a nice orchid, get over it, move on, then you can switch off now. If you're like me and you want to put a label on things you see, then worth hanging around and taking note of what the experts have said. Okay, strange plant number 1. The early marsh orchid cross, common spotted orchid. That's what I thought it was at the start, and it's been challenged a few times by people who think there might be something more to it, but they have sort of come around now to agreeing, I think, with myself on this one. It's almost certainly a common spotted cross early marsh orchid. It has its own name, which is Dactylorhiza cross Kernerorum. Don't say that when you're drunk. It's not 100%, because most of these hybrids tend to look more like the common spotted orchid. This one looks more like the early marsh orchid. There are theories that this probably has crossed back from being originally a cross between the two to then crossing back with an early marsh orchid, so slowly filtering out the common spotted orchid element of it and making it more and more and more like one of its parents, the early marsh orchid, but still hanging on to spots on the leaves and slightly unusual colouring in the flower. So we're going to wrap that one up. I'm happy with that one, that it is a cross between the two. It's only 90%, but that one's sort of closed out as a cross, common spotted early marsh orchid. Now, onto this wonderful heath spotted orchid, as in, what on earth is a heath spotted orchid doing at Castor Hanglands? Well, the answer is it probably isn't a heath-spotted orchid, or it is, but it's only partly. The conclusion on this one is it's not a pure heath-spotted orchid, and the argument is that the little spur in the centre of the flower at the bottom is not pointed, and on a heath-spotted orchid it should be pointed, it should be small, it should be triangular, it should be sharp-edged, triangular, pointed little spur, and it's not. It's a sort of rounded spur, and a rounded spur is the sort of thing you see on a southern marsh orchid flower, not on a heath-spotted orchid flower. So the view now is it's not a pure heath-spotted orchid. However, it's accepted that it is partly a heath-spotted orchid and partly a southern marsh orchid. So it's a hybrid between the two, known as Dactylorhiza cross Hallii, Hallii. And I'm happy with that. It's a bit weird. It's a bit weird because you don't really get heath-spotted orchids at Castor, or very rarely, and you certainly don't get many southern marsh, and yet somehow I'm being asked to believe the two have combined to produce a hybrid, but there's no other explanation. It makes sense. I can see where they're coming from. The colour palette is also white, dark purple and mauve. Stranger mix than we usually see of those three, but it's the southern marsh orchid palette, and I'm sort of happy with that as well. So that one's going to be closed out at the moment as heath-spotted orchid cross southern marsh orchid. Crazy. Last but not least, this weirdo. Now, nobody's got a clue really about this one. It was dismissed initially as a common spotted orchid gone wrong, an aberrant common spotted orchid was the phrase used on the Facebook site. I had to look that word up. It means non-conforming. It means weird, basically. But I wasn't happy with that. I went back today and took photographs of it, and you can see early marsh orchid markings on those leaves. If you look closely, there are those EMO sacs on the leaves. That is definitely, there is EMO, early marsh orchid, in this flower. So, you know, what is it? I think it's a cross, again, early marsh orchid with common spotted orchid that's just sort of gone a different way. The interesting thing is this plant is actually in the same sort of 6 foot square as the early marsh common spotted we looked at a few minutes ago. They're all close by, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think there's a reason for that. Whatever he's throwing out, these strange genes, is in that area, and it's certainly an area next season I'll be going back to very quickly to see what's coming up. But this is a mighty weird one. It probably is common spotted cross early marsh orchid, but the gene mix is different to the first one we saw, but there are some similarities, even though it's not obvious to the eye, and I'm sort of happy that it is common spotted cross early marsh, but it's just gone in a different direction, and I think that's as good as we're going to get unless somebody comes up with something better. So that's probably totally confused you completely, but yeah, I like to get to the bottom of these, and I think short of having a DNA kit, that's about as good as we're going to get, and I can sleep easy now on seeing those lovely orchids. To find 3 strange ones like that at the same site within inches of each other is pretty amazing. So I've quite enjoyed looking at these, and yeah, it's thrown up some interesting discussion. So that's it. Hope I haven't confused you too much, but I thought I'd throw this one out there for those that might be interested in the dark arts of orchid hybridization.